Hi everyone! For today's video, I will introduce to you an amazing novel that will surely have your attention. A melancholic and suspenseful novel that merges slavery narrative with a genre of fantasy and quest novel, none other than The Water Dancer by Ta-Nehisi Coates. And to begin, let us get to know who is Ta-Nehisi Coates.
Ta-Nehisi Paul Coates was born on September 30, 1975. He is a writer, journalist, educator, and an American essayist. Coates's mother was a teacher, and his father was a librarian, entrepreneur, and publisher who founded Black Classic Press, which reissued forgotten works by African Americans. Coates's unusual first name was an Egyptian appellation for the ancient African region of Nubia. His exposure to books as a youth prompted Coates to gravitate toward a literary career, and he started writing poetry at the age of 17. In 1993, he enrolled at Howard University, but he left without a degree. Coates began writing for a variety of periodicals, including Washington Monthly, to which he contributed the attention-grabbing essay, Confessions of a Black Mr. Mum, Philadelphia Weekly, Mother Jones, The Village Voice, Entertainment Weekly, Time, and The Oprah magazine. His career blossomed when in 2008 he became a blogger for The Atlantic magazine's website. In 2008 Coates published his first book, the memoir The Beautiful Struggle, A Father, Two Sons, and an Unlikely Road to Manhood. The critically acclaimed work was followed by Between the World and Me, 2015, which became a bestseller. In 2019 Coates released his first novel, The Water Dancer. The book, which earned widespread acclaim, centers on a slave with photographic memory who aids the Underground Railroad. Coates's other fiction work included a comic series based on the Marvel superhero Black Panther. The first installment was published in 2016. Ta-Nehisi Coates lives in Brooklyn, New York with his wife Kenyatta Matthews, and their son, Samori. The Water Dancer is set in Virginia during the time of slavery. Its universe is close to that of the historical antebellum American South but has added surreal elements. In The Water Dancer, the enslaved are called as the task, and the slave owners are known as the quality. The protagonist Hiram is an enslaved African-American man who was born and raised on a tobacco plantation and estate called Lockless. Hiram's mother, Rose, was enslaved while his father, Hal Walker, is the white master of Lockless. Hal's white son, Maynard, is Hiram's brother, master and heir of Lockless. When Hiram is 19, Maynard dies in an accident in the River Goose. Hiram has a photographic memory, but he can't remember his mother, nor can he recall how Howell separated him when Hiram was young. Hiram also possesses a special power called conduction, which allows him to transport himself, and eventually other people, from one place to another. Hiram tries to run away with the woman he loves, Sophia, but the enslaved hunters caught them and separated them both. Eventually the Underground, a network of resistance to slavery, rescues and recruits Hiram. He makes his way north to the free city of Philadelphia, where he works with the Underground while struggling to adapt. Hiram meets Harriet Tubman, also known as Moses. He is a powerful Underground agent who helps him understand that conduction walks through the power of memory. Hiram returns to Virginia to help the Underground and to rescue Sophia and Thena, his childhood caretaker. He works as his father's servant so he could provide intelligence to the Underground. He learns to control his power better and uses it to send Thena north to Philadelphia. Meanwhile, Hiram and Sophia remain at Lockless, forming a romantic relationship and taking care of Sophia's daughter, Caroline. The story continued as Hal Walker dies and the Virginia Underground takes over his estate through the clever scheming of Corinne Quinn, a wealthy white woman and leader to the resistance of slavery. Hiram now manages the estate and the station of the Underground.
Okay, let's continue with the literary elements. For the theme, we have the slavery because the story is all about slavery. Next, the settings. The settings is in Virginia in the mid-19th century during the time of slavery. The genre, it is magical realism and historical fiction. And the tone and mood of this novel is nostalgic and poetic. For the point of view, it is a first person because Hiram, the protagonist and the narrator, is using the pronoun I. Next, we have the plot. So for the exposition, the novel begins with a persona narrating his experience in the River Goose, stating how he avoided seeing that bridge as well as explaining the power of memory. And for the rising action, Hiram and the mean woman Thina was called to serve in Howell's mansion. For this, Hiram had learned the reality between task and quality. He also understood how the luckless is falling and identified Maynard as a hare not ready for his duties. Hiram then met Sophia and fall in love. He decided to run away together with Sophia and look for freedom. During their escape, they were ambushed and punished for an imprisonment. Climax. Hiram returns to Laclas to free Sophia and Thina while he pretended to be his father's personal servant. He knows he can save them both, so he asks for help to Corinne. However, Corinne refuses any sort of aid. As a result, Hiram decided to tell both Thina and Sophia about conduction. Upon knowing, Thina gets horrified and enraged. Next is the falling action. Hiram conducts Thina to Philadelphia, where Thina meets Keziah and Harith. Resolution or denouement. Before Howell dies, he arranged for Corinne to buy Lackless and take over its debts. Corinne and Hiram turn the plantation into an underground station which Hiram manages. He, Sophia, and Caroline live there together as a family. Conflict. Man versus society. The major conflict is between Hiram and his attempt to free himself and the other slaves from enslaver. This happened to be man versus the society, for enslaver are not just a one person. So much with the plot and conflict, now let's go through the characters. First, we have the protagonist Hiram, the son of Rose and Howell Walker. He is extremely smart, possessing a supernaturally good memory and the ability to perform conduction, supernatural skills that allow one to travel through the power of memory. And we have the other characters. First is Maynard, Hiram's stepbrother, Rose, Hiram's mother, Howell Walker, Hiram's father, and Corinne Queen, Sophia, Tina, the Big John, Keziah, Moses, also known as Harriet, Mr. Fields or Mika Habland, Santebes, Abby, Lydia and Otha, Raymond Dwight, Carrie, Caroline, and Nathaniel. Nathaniel is the one who raped Sophia, and they have daughter Caroline. And after the characters, we have the literary devices. This is the last one as part of the elements. Next is foreshadowing. After making his escape plan with Georgie Parks, Hiram runs into Hawkins and Amy. They ask him about going to see Georgie and he assumed that they are spying on him for the quality. Then suddenly, Hiram's former tutor, Mr. Fields, comes to meet with Amy and Hawkins on the street. They all seem nervous. Hiram feels that this encounter is strange, just like Hawkins' apparent lie about finding him by the river goose. In this way, the moment foreshadows that Hawkins and Amy know something more about Georgie Parks, and that they were involved with Mr. Fields in a way that they eventually have important implication for Hiram. Next, understatement. When Hiram recalls his handling by the flesh trader at Rayland Jail, he uses understated language to describe how they abused him. This is because facing the reality of what he hounds did to him was too difficult for him to bear at that time. Later, when he is older, he recognized that the men physically and sexually violated him, saying, "It took time to learn how to speak of what was done to me directly, to tell the story of my time in Rayland's jail as it was, and not feel my manhood fleeting for me." Allusion. In the novel, the Underground alludes to the Underground Railroad, a vast network of people who help fugitives to escape from slavery in the United States. And Harriet, aka Moses, alludes to Harriet Tubman, one of the most famous conductors of the Underground Railroad. The notion of conducting itself, it alludes the Underground Railroad. Imagery. Blue mist, blue light, and color blue came to represent Hiram's experience of conduction and the dream of freedom. Blue mist and blue light accompany Hiram's experiences of conduction. When he is in a when he is certain that he will die drowning, when he is certain that he will die drowning in the river Goose, he feels a blue light surrounding him. In this blue light, he feels a sense of peace and freedom, and knows that there really is a home place of our own, a life beyond the task. In this way, for Hiram, the blue mist and light represents conduction and the possibility of freedom beyond enslaved life. Paradox. By the time he runs away, Hiram has long desired to escape slavery and be free. But paradoxically, when he finally reaches freedom in Philadelphia, Hiram misses his home in Virginia. Personification. This is one of the lines of Hiram. It goes like this. I was close enough to see the shadow of the bonfire dancing off her face. So much with the literary elements. Now, let's go to the last one, the literary analysis.
The Water Dancer is the debut novel by Ta-Nehisi Coates, published on September 24, 2019. It tells the story of Hiram Walker, who is born into slavery on a Virginia plantation called Lockless and possesses a photographic memory but cannot remember his mother. He is able to transport people over long distances by using a power known as conduction, which can fold the earth like fabric and allows him to travel across large areas via waterways. The Water Dancer presents a haunting narrative of slavery, memory, and one man's quest for freedom. The journey from slavery to freedom via the underground through the eyes of the narrator, Hiram Walker. What if the memory had the power to transport enslaved people to freedom? Over the course of the novel, it becomes clear to Hiram that memories, even when they are painful, can also be empowering, an essential part of the journey to freedom. One way in which this emerges is through the fact that he's only able to gain control over his power of conduction once he remembers Rose, and in particular remembers that she tried to escape Lockless, the plantation where Hiram was born, before she and Hiram were recaptured and she was sold. Remembering Rose allows Hiram to properly exercise conduction, which in turn becomes the key tool he uses to convey himself and others to freedom. Hiram wrestles with the negative power of memory as well. The evils of slavery are impossible to simply forget, and therefore one cannot understand someone who has been tasked without knowing something of their memory. Hiram observes, I knew by then how much the past weighs upon us. I knew this more than anyone. I knew men who had held down their own wives to be flogged. I knew children who'd watched those men hold down their mothers. I knew children who rooted through slop with hogs. But worst of all, I knew how the memory of such things altered us, how we could never escape it, how it became an awful part of us. Literalizing the connection between memory and freedom, the novel illustrates the point during a conversation between Hiram and Harriet, a leader of the Underground Railroad. During their conversations, Harriet underlines the idea that slavery blocks people's access to the past, which manifests in the form of forgetting. To forget is to truly slave. To forget is to die. Soon after, Harriet adds, for memory is the chariot, and memory is the way, and memory is bridge from the curse of slavery to the boon of freedom. These words demonstrate that memory is important because without reckoning with the horrors of slavery, there can be no future in which enslaved people and their descendants are truly free.